Libra. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for April of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas in San Francisco.
Well, Libra, this month's focus on work, health, and relationships might make you want a more in-depth conversation to discuss how you can advance at work, improve your health, or have better relationships. Check the YouTube description below for the right readings for these topics. We've given you a couple of links there. Well, I want to talk about the 3 moons going on. And the first one actually happened on the very last day of March, but we didn't report it last month. And we're still feeling it, kind of echoing and reverberating here at the beginning of April. So this is a new moon in Aries right here in your 7th house. And a moon in Aries will generally bring up a lot of themes about self and identity and actions that you could take, and it's likely to make you more decisive. But just a little warning, Mercury is here with this moon and could make conversations pretty sharp. So finding ways to communicate what you need to say that are direct and honest and forceful if necessary, but keeping it gentle in your characteristic Libra fashion. That one we're calling Honest Words, Clear Intentions, and you can find out more about it in the March 2022 news playlist on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology. The second moon is coming up on the 16th. This is a full moon in your sign, Libra, right here in your 1st house. And so this one could bring up a lot of strong emotions in you. Libra is an air sign, and so there's this quality of rationality and certainly balance that you're always going for. But when the moon is full in your own sign, it can bring up emotions whether you want it to or not. And this one in particular involves Pluto. And so chances of things coming up in conversations, which might be arguments, things coming up that, have just not been spoken about for a while, chances of that are fairly good. And it could lead to, some pretty intense conversations. But that can also lead to transformation, which can be a good thing. And there is help from Saturn and Juno, which can really smooth the way to better, more refined diplomatic maneuvers. So then I want to tell you about the 3rd moon that's coming up. It's happening on the 30th. And this is also a new moon, but it's different because it's an eclipse. A new moon is what happens when the moon and the sun get together, but when they get together near a node, in this case, the north node in Taurus, well, then you've got an eclipse, and this is a pretty strong one. An eclipse is there to show you your shadow. That's what it does. It lets us see stuff that ordinarily we would put behind us or keep hidden. And a solar eclipse in particular shows us our shadow through how we behave. In this case, it's happening in your 8th house. And this is a house that is ruled by Pluto. So it covers some of the deeper and heavier stuff in life. It covers sexuality, intimacy, shared finances, and certainly, psychological death and rebirth experiences. And so watch your behavior, around the end of the month as this eclipse is approaching. If you feel like, compelled to have an affair or a one-night stand or embezzle a whole bunch of money, or, that kind of bad behavior, check yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say that you're prone to that, but this is an intense one. Let's put it that way. The last thing I want to tell you about right here is that Ceres has been traveling along through your 9th house. And I talked about this in your February horoscope, so you might want to check that out. And I just want to give you the word that during April, it remains in your ninth house, but it's going to be moving into your 10th house next month in May. And so I'll have things to report about your finances when that happens, because Ceres governs money, among other things. Hey, Julia, what's up with Mercury, Venus, and Mars?
A lot is up with Mercury, Venus, and Mars, Jamie. And Libra, hi. Let's start with Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication, and it also represents your mind. And Mercury is going through 3 houses this month, which is a lot. And that means that Mercury is just moving very, very fast right now. And when it's moving fast, like it does now, it means that it's kind of like the opposite of a Mercury retrograde season when it's going backwards and has to be slowing down. So, you know, communications and all things Mercury related, including writing, technology, should be kind of moving along pretty well. Now, Mercury starts the month in your 7th house of partnership, and it's just there for the first few days. And Jamie and I really covered this cycle in our last month's video. If you want a refresher, I encourage you to look at that. But what's important about Mercury in the 7th for you this month, Libra, is that on the 2nd, April 2nd, the Sun and Mercury are going to be exactly conjoined in the sky in your 7th house. And this conjunction is known as Greater Epiphany Day. And it's basically these Epiphany days happen when Mercury is in the same space in the sky as the Sun, and they tend to bookend the Mercury retrograde cycle. So one cycle is finished and a new cycle is beginning. And these Epiphany days are really insightful times in our lives. They can bring a lot of revelations and aha moments and help us gain clarity. So since it's happening in your 7th house of partnership, you could be having some greater insights into your relationship this month. And if you're a single Libra, maybe you're having great insights into what you want into your next relationship. The 7th house also rules contractors. So people you hire for advice, like a doctor, lawyer, or counselor. So you could be having some clarification and other aha moments about counselors in your life or contractors. Maybe you need to hire somebody for something. Then on April 10th, Mercury shifts into your 8th house of other people's money. It's going to spend most of the month in this house for about 19 days. And the 8th house, it's a house of investigation. It's a house of research, and it rules the money that you share with others, such as a partner, like having a joint credit card or an inheritance through your family, or maybe loans, mortgages, taxes, that kind of stuff through institutions like banks. So with Mercury in the 8th house for a lot of the month, you know, around tax season, maybe this is what's going to be preoccupying a lot of your mind. Mercury in the 8th is a great time for maybe increased communications around money with people in your life. And it's a wonderful transit for having to do any type of research or any type of investigation, whether that's for your professional or personal life, because your mind is very probing with this transit. Then by April 29th, Mercury goes into the 9th house of travel and adventure, and it's only there for the tail end of the month, and it's really going to spend a lot of next month in that house. So we're going to really cover it in depth into our next videos. So check those out, coming out soon. Now let's also talk about Venus, Libra, because Venus is the planet of art, beauty, and relationships. Those are things that are very dear to you, being a Libra, one of Venus's signs. And Venus starts the month in the 5th house for the first few days of the month. It's good time for having fun and going out on dates. Then by April 5th, Venus enters your 6th house, where she's going to be for the rest of the month. The 6th house is a work house. It's a service house. It represents the people you work with, like clients, customers, your boss, co-workers, and it can also represent health as well as work conditions. So with Venus in the 6th, it's a really good time. It can be a nice time on your job. You could be enjoying the more day-to-day activities at your job, and you might be getting along well with the people you work with. So work could be a little bit more fun this month. And also, since this is is the house of service. Any way you're of service to other people, you could be more of service to your partner with Venus in the 6th, or maybe they're being of service to you and helping you out with some practical things. And since this is also a health house, it can rule our habits. Venus likes to indulge a little bit. So you might be a little bit more indulgent in your habits this month, but that's definitely not a bad thing. And Venus can also give a nice little boost to health as well. So then the last planet I want to talk about is Mars. He's totally different than Venus. He's the planet of action and activity. Wherever we have him, we feel very driven. And he spends the first 14 days of the month in your 5th house of fun and children. So you could feel just super driven, like you just really energized by going out and having fun. The 5th house rules clubs and casinos and bowling alleys and basically places, bars, places you go out to kind of let your hair down and have a good time. And that's not a bad thing, but sometimes if you have things like responsibilities getting in your way, it can be a little frustrating. Mars in the 5th house can sometimes be a little bit conflict prone. And since the 5th house rules your children, you might run into some flare-ups with your kids around then too. Then by April 14th, Mars is joining Venus in the 6th house, where it's going to remain for the rest of the month. And Mars in the 6th might be very driven at work, might be, wanting to get a lot of things done, at your job. Mars in the 6th, actually, Mars tends to do well in the 6th. Traditionally, this is known as the house of Mars's joy. So I think the best use for this transit is really throw yourself into work, really find ways to get energized, being of service to other people. Mars in the 6th can sometimes create a little flare up with health too. But Venus is in there. So, I think that she's kind of smoothing things over and making that mitigating, Mars in there. But sometimes chronic conditions can come up a little bit, like a headache or menstruation issues. But this can also be a time to revisit those things and plan a better routine to support you.
Absolutely. I want to talk about Juno, which starts the month in your 5th house. And I talked about that already in the February horoscope, so you might want to check that out. Juno is a goddess of partnership, committed partnership, which can mean marriage, but can also mean business partnerships. And wherever she goes, she brings that quality of partnership and collaboration. And she is about to move into your 6th house. She's entering Pisces and going to be in Pisces for pretty much the rest of the year, because she'll be going retrograde here. So when Juno goes retrograde, we're thrown into a relationship retrospection. And this happens about every year, year and a half. And a relationship retrospection in your 6th house is going to be about your work relationships and the relationships in your life that are unequal inherently because one person is below the other one in a hierarchy. So your relationship with your boss, your relationship with any people that you manage or hire, and also the ways that you may serve or be served in relationships that are supposed to be equal, like a marriage. And so we'll be engaging in a relationship retrospection later this year. And for you, it's gonna come down in this arena of service and work. And that while that's not here yet, I wanted to let you know that was on the horizon. Then also on the 20th, we have the seasonal change. The sun leaves Aries and moves into Taurus, entering into your 8th house. And the sun is about shining the light of consciousness or paying attention. Wherever the sun goes, it's a good idea to pay attention to things in that arena so that they can flourish, because when you pay attention to something, it grows, it expands. This is the arena of finances that you share with others, such as a spouse or a business partner. This is a very intimate realm. It also covers sexuality and sharing emotionally too, as in a relationship or as in therapy, for example. So this transit really constitutes taking a flashlight and shining it into some of the more mysterious and hidden corners of our human psychology. And so as the sun is passing along the sign of Taurus, beginning April 20th and going for about 30 days, it's a really good idea to get out a flashlight and go into the sub-basement of your soul or your partner's soul and take a look around and shed a little light on the subject. And then the last thing I want to tell you about is Pluto, which is going retrograde this month. Pluto does this once a year. Pluto brings times of transformation and metamorphosis and will spend several months retrograde until October. And during that time, those of us who are having a Pluto transit this year will feel like that process of transformation is deepening and intensifying. You can find out if you're having a Pluto transit by checking the link that I've put into the YouTube description below for you about Pluto transits, which explains some of what they mean and how to handle them, and gives you ways to figure out whether you're having one this year. And until next time, we will see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.